everybody, and welcome to episode 24 of the Classic Rock Podcast. For those about to pod, we salute you. On this episode...
Nearly forgot then, didn't you?
Stop it! On this episode, we look back at the best bits of 2021 and have a little look forward to 2022. We have our usual snippets of news.
You're going so well.
Okay, yes, we've got news. We have got hidden gems, and we have got My Year in Rock, which is 2004. Good luck with that, Matt.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
Okay, but before we go any further, let me introduce to you the Christmas present you never give back.
Oh.
My co-host, Mr. Matt Rogers. Happy New Year, Matt.
And to you, Brian. Happy 2022. HNY. That's a new thing. Have you noticed? People write that. HNY.
That's
HNY.
right. Yeah.
HNY. I think, the world's gone a bit, mad if we condensed everything to 3-letter, abbreviations. But HNY to you, Brian.
HNY to you. Hashtag.
HNY. And HNY, everyone who's listening. HNY.
Was Santa good to you, Matt?
He was. Thank you
What
for
did
asking.
you get?
It's a very personal question, actually. I got some Tony Iommi perfume. I got a book from you. Thank you, Brian, for the Christmas present. No, I didn't get any Tony Iommi perfume, actually. I read today, by the way, cutting sideways, that Tony Iommi has got a collection. He collects fragrances. Now, we talked about Tony Iommi a lot. We do love Tony Iommi, of course, the godfather of metal. And but apparently he's got a collection of fragrances that he's collected on his travels. He's got about 80 different fragrances. He's got a kind of a man cave full of aftershave, I imagine. I think that says a lot about the man, to be honest with you. Smart, smells good, godfather of metal. It's good. I like it. I've got like 1 or 2 bottles of aftershave. That's it. I think that's what most people have got. But anyway, this is supposed to be a rock podcast. It's all about aftershave. So, how about you? Did Father Christmas or Santa Claus bring you anything pleasant in his sack?
He did. He did indeed. I got some rock and roll books. I did indeed. I got Dave Grohl's autobiography. I also got a book by a well-known ska band called Madness. Don't know who I got that from. No. And I got a colouring book as well too. I got the rock and roll colouring book from you about Thin Lizzy.
Well, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
Very welcome. I think we that colouring book company, that rock and roll colouring book, they owe us, I think. Amount of plugs we give them. So anything caught your eye in the news lately, Brian, apart from Tony Iommi's collection of fragrances?
A couple of days ago, we're recording the show on, what's today's date? We're recording the show on Tuesday the 11th of January, so it's a couple of days after the passing of Neil Peart 2 years ago. And a lot of people have been putting up messages on Facebook and social media about the Professor, as we know him. Yep. But a young drummer, and we have to tip our hats to Brandon Toews, I think his name is, Toews. So Brandon's a drummer, and he did 175 song medley of Rush tunes in 24 minutes. So amazing. We salute Brandon for that tribute to Neil Peart.
Indeed.
He must be some drummer.
Well, that's true, actually. It's a shame it didn't take him 21 minutes and 12 seconds, of course. That's a little Rush-related joke there, gag. Yeah. 2112, of course, being one of their famous albums. That's quite an achievement and quite a nice tribute to the great man who, as you say, sadly left us a couple of years ago. Yeah. Neil Peart, the drummer from Rush. Now that's good. Yeah, I mean, that must have been quite some feat. As you say, even playing for 24 minutes, let alone playing Rush songs. So I'll leave it to you to choose whatever, drum related Rush song, because Tom Sawyer is the classic Rush sort of drum filled song. So I'll leave you to put that on.
You mean you're not allowing me to put 175 Rush songs on this?
Well,
this
I would like
episode?
that. I would like that. I'm not sure anyone else would like it. So do you remember a few episodes ago? Because we like an auction.
Not that we bid on anything, but we do like
we
an
probably
auction.
when you hear about this one, we probably should have done. Maybe. So a little while ago, we talked about a piano that was used by Queen to record the Works album back in 1984.
Yeah.
So it had been tinkled with, that's the right expression, by Freddie Mercury and maybe other members of the band as well. So anyway, but it was used by Queen. And it's owned by Mike Peters of The Alarm. And it actually sold, but it only sold for £11,500, which seems remarkably... I mean, that's not much to pay for a piano full stop, let alone one that's been played with by Queen. So maybe we should have, you should have sold, a few of your guitars, and I should have, I don't know, helped you sell your guitars. And then we could have maybe bought it and then just like used it as a coffee table or something, maybe.
If our viewers could only now see my face as you are saying, Brian, sell some of your guitars to buy a piano.
Well, Freddie Mercury played it. I don't think Freddie Mercury's played any of your guitars, Brian, unless I'm very much mistaken.
No, that's very true.
So I was quite surprised at that, to be honest with you.
It's a second-hand car, isn't it? It's the cost of a second-hand car.
Exactly. So anyway, someone's got a bark in there. So I just thought I'd put that one to bed after we talked about that one a few weeks ago.
Okay.
So anything else, Brian? What else you got for us?
The only thing I thought was quite interesting, and you know me, obviously, and the news came out today was that Andy Sneap, who is the producer who's been producing the material, and he's been the touring guitarist for Judas Priest, whilst Glenn Tipton hasn't been really available or well enough to play. The Priest came out with a decision today to continue as a 4-piece band, and it just got me thinking. I'm
It's not
I'm stunned.
odd decision. Yeah, it's an odd decision, isn't it? Because Judas Priest are one of those bands that essentially their sound is built on the two guitars.
Yeah.
Maybe they haven't got that kind of harmonic style that Thin Lizzy had, for example, but certainly, they've got the, this sort of stereo style, stereo effect, the large full sound of having two guitars. And essentially since Glenn Tipton joined in about 1974, I think it was, they had the two guitars. So I was quite surprised at that.
Yeah.
Because, it can't be it can't be for the want of people being available. I mean, you could play the guitar a little bit, not very well, but a little bit.
It needs to be on my CV, because last episode I was obviously you tipped me as a member of Whitesnake, so now I'm available.
Well, I think you should. I think you'd look good in those leather trousers and the and the boots and the studs and everything. I think that would be quite a good look for you, Ryan. But anyway, so I was quite surprised at that. Yeah, a 4-piece. I mean, it sort of suggests a different sound, of course, and I don't know why.
Yeah,
I need to get to the bottom of why they've not. Because as you say, Andy Sneap is a producer first and foremost, and obviously a very good guitar player. So they brought him in to play when they're on tour. But why they haven't brought him back? Apparently, he's very disappointed that not that he's not being kind of retained. So more to come on that, I would imagine. That's quite an interesting one.
So the final piece of news, and I know I suppose sad news today, that Burke Shelley, who was the founder and bass player in the one of Wales's greatest heavy metal bands, if not the heavy metal band from Wales, passed away today. Obviously, when we were at Steel House, if you remember, yes, there was a little bit of Bread Fan that was played whilst we were down in Abbeville. So, sad news today that Budgie's bass player, Burke Shelley, and there's obviously been a pouring out from the rock community about, and a lot of the forums that you and I follow in terms of Planet Rock and Friends of Planet Rock, where everybody's just been talking about how great and I suppose underrated Budgie were. in those periods, but those people who seem to be fans of them are just sort of out there. So R.I.P. Burke Shelley.
So last time you set me the task of talking about the year 2004
I do.
in everyone's second favourite feature, behind you know what, My Year in Rock. We don't often refer to it as that, do we? My Year in Rock. But anyway, 2004, one of the few years we haven't covered yet.
I know.
We're getting through them. I'm not sure what we're going to do when we finish these years. We'll have to go back to them and hope people don't remember. But anyway, 2004. How old were you in 2004? Were you finished finishing university then?
I think so.
Yeah,
yeah. I think it finished in 2004. I was a strapping young lad at 35.
were you?
A mere
Really?
babe in arms.
Indeed. You hadn't started shaving yet or anything yet, had you?
Still
35.
haven't.
Right, so that was 2000. I won't tell you how old I was. But 2004, quite a good year, looking back on it. Some interesting albums, a few gigs that I went to, and I'll invite you to talk us through some of your favourites as well. The first Alter Bridge album came out in 2004.
Oh, here we go.
Now, I'm quite a fan of Alter Bridge. Here we go, indeed. I'm quite a fan of Alter Bridge. And you know how I came across Alter Bridge? Back in 2003, 4, Classic Rock Magazine used to give away CDs.
That's right. Yep.
And they'd be like 3 or 4 songs, well, it'd be like 12 songs, but a few songs of different artists, of course. And these days, I don't think they even give them away because no one really do people play CDs? I think so, but it's obviously it's become less of a thing, isn't it, with streaming and in a way the resurgence of vinyl. But anyway, so I came across Alter Bridge on one of those free CDs, actually a song called Metalingus, which is off the first album. And on the strength of that, I bought the album. And I've been a fan of Creed, and essentially Alter Bridge were born out of Creed, minus Scott Stapp, the singer, but with Miles Kennedy, the great Miles Kennedy, who we talked about once or twice, one of the voices of the 21st century in the rock sort of genre. And really good album, One Day Remains. A really good debut. You look back on it, it's got some good songs on it. I mean, they progressed as a band. They write longer, sort of more heavy songs, more dual guitar songs now. But One Day Remains, the Alter Bridge debut, is a good album. My favourite songs on it, Down to My Last, which I think I probably played to death, and that's my favourite song off the album. And In Loving Memory, which Mark Tremonti wrote after his mum died, which is quite a it's quite a moving song. So put both those on the old.
I will do. Yep.
The old playlist, please, Brian.
Well.
Green Day. We haven't talked much about Green Day, but I think they probably released their biggest album to date in 2004 with American Idiot.
Was that 2004?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't be talking about it otherwise, would I, to be honest with you?
That's very true. Very true.
I do some research. But 2004, it's apparently a concept album. I'm not sure what the concept is, to be honest with you. But it's it's classic Green Day. And if anyone hasn't seen the accompanying live, which I think came out a couple of years later, the live DVD/album Bullet in the Bible, which essentially is playing most of American Idiot live. That's great stuff. Should have saved that for a hidden gem, to be honest with you. But anyway, American Idiot's really good. Jesus of Suburbia is probably my favourite song on the album. An epic, 6 or 7 minutes long, and loads of time changes. But of course, the title song itself is a really classic piece of Green Day satire on the American public. And indeed, the American government.
If the kids are still listening to our show, they would say it's banging.
Yeah, the kids. How are the kids doing, by the way?
Kids are okay. Kids,
yeah, the kids are all right.
Kids are all right.
Finally, just another album, just to mention very briefly, the first Velvet Revolver album came out. Now, Velvet Revolver, one of those kind of modern supergroups, essentially. Sort of 3/5 of Guns N' Roses, plus Scott Weiland from Stone Temple Pilots, plus Dave Kushner on the rhythm guitar. And I mean, they put out a couple of good albums, in a way against the odds, because they were all having various issues, and particularly Scott Weiland and to an extent Slash were still in the throes of addiction and trying to get sober. Maybe Scott Weiland essentially didn't ever win his battle, clearly. But two quite decent albums. Contraband, which came out in 2004, probably the superior, in my opinion, of the two. A few really good songs on it. Slither being the standout song, and Fall to Pieces, which in a way is kind of autobiographical of Scott Weiland's sort of lifestyle, I suppose, at the time. So yeah, quite a kind of eclectic mix, I suppose you could say, from the sort of more clean-cut Alter Bridge through to the sort of the rough and ready Green Day, and then, as I say, the sort of super group against the odds of a Velvet Revolver, of course, who I saw at the time. Actually, they were very good live, put on a good show.
Really?
Threw in a few Guns N' Roses songs, and they. And I think maybe the odd Stone Temple Pilots song, to be honest with you. But left a decent legacy. Two reasonably good albums with Contraband and Libertad a few years later. Memories of 2004, Brian?
2004. Well, and two things that are interesting about the Velvet Revolver story is, obviously, we will now call him the great Miles Kennedy. Miles actually declined, so he didn't go for any of the auditions, because I think Velvet Revolver were involved in, the way VH1 used to do TV programs, which was they'll have a documentary about find the singer. So they actually Velvet Revolver had a VH1 documentary about finding the singer. So they went through all of that, and obviously there's famous singers, not so famous singers, and I'm almost certain that Duff McKagan approached Miles to be the singer, and Miles declined to participate. But obviously, Miles then hooked up with Slash for the Conspirators stuff. So that was interesting. And I have to say, I had a different experience when I went to see them live. I saw them on the tour. They were really, really good live, but they did play quite a few of the Guns N' Roses material, and I have to say, it made me miss Axl more. I just thought, I've got three members of Guns N' Roses. Scott has his style, and he's a very, very slithery. He's a great frontman in his own right. But I was kind of missing the danger of Axl. And so I was quite pleased whenever Guns N' Roses got back. So Velvet, that is a great album, and you've called out the two standout tracks on that. For me, interesting. It was an interesting year, 2004. I have a couple of bands, and this is your opportunity to go. Obviously, you mentioned Alter Bridge, and you can go, oh yeah. So the first album for me is my favorite band from Sweden. Those young boys who had their final countdown. So Start from the Dark is obviously the reunion album. So whenever Europe packed up after Prisoners in Paradise in 1991, they reformed in 2003, and then they put out Start from the Dark in 2004. A really, really modern, heavy album. Probably at that time, when you had the likes, internet radio, Planet Rock, all that kind of stuff. The song that was getting a lot of play on the radio was "Gotta Have Faith" and "Start from the Dark." A really banging album. That's the reference for the kids. So Europe put up their new album, and they've continued in that vein of good classic rock albums, less keyboards, more guitar. Yeah. A band who you've got some connections with this band.
Have I?
Well, it's one of the bands that you.
Diamond Head.
No, it's not Diamond Head. It's not Diamond Head. So there's a band that a band called Rooster. Do you remember Rooster?
I do, and I know what the connection is.
Okay, but see, this is why we don't do any preparation in the show whatsoever. So obviously, Rooster were a bit of they're English hard rock band, a young band. I don't want to say they were a pop band like Hanson but they were quite soft rock. But their debut album is fantastic, and obviously, I think they did one debut album. And then obviously broke up. But Luke Podesnik, who was the guitarist in that band, went on to be a member of
the Temperance Movement.
That's right. Yeah. So, but it's well worth. I'll put a couple of tracks on that album. Rooster is a very, very good album. And the last album for me that I'll just call out again, it's a live album from 2004. It's the band who I love called Train. Train put out an album called Alive at Last. It was recorded obviously after their bazillion selling Drops of Jupiter, but you get a real sense of what a good American rock band that Train are before they went poppy, many years later with their latter album or the albums that they've put out. But it's a really, really, really good album. And it showcases Pat Monahan as a fantastic singer. So 2004, as you say, quite an eclectic bunch, but some good albums in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Gigs wise, apart from Velvet Revolver, can you remember going to many?
I had a really barren year in 2004. I went to see Rush. Rush came back round in 2004.
Of course they did, yeah.
Yeah. So I went to see Rush, and I went to see another artist who will remain nameless until my hidden gem.
Oh, exciting.
I'm keeping this artist to my hidden gem.
Yeah, there were a few. Listen to this. I was looking back at what I went to see. I went to the Royal Albert Hall in London. Saw Joe Satriani with Steve Vai and Robert Fripp from King Crimson. That was an interesting sort of 3-act bill. And Steve Vai did indeed bring out his, whatever it is, 5, 6, 7 neck. Is it a Strat that he plays?
He plays an Ibanez gem.
Oh, okay. Must be that. Another one that I saw was Judas Priest, who were on their comeback. Rob Halford had rejoined, and they were back on the sort of, as I say, the comeback trail. Probably one of the first sort of double head gigs, let's say, them and the Scorpions at Hammersmith, which was good.
So that was the year that was 2004, Matthew.
Yes,
well
indeed.
done.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it was good looking back. I always enjoy looking back. And I'm going to suggest a year for you.
Okay.
For next time. And that year is, are you ready?
I am indeed.
1998.
Oh, that'll be interesting. 1998, that will be when rock fights with Backstreet Boys and Take That and Boyzone and Westlife and
yeah,
all
that fight got dirty, didn't it? I remember that fight, that big punch up in the car park, the Wembley Arena, wasn't it? It wasn't pretty.
What? Did rock survive 1998?
Well, that's the question. Did it?
Okay. Well, we shall see.
Indeed. So there you go. Next time, 1998, please, Brian. So this is our first podcast of 2022, and much as we did this time last year, we thought it'd be interesting to look back at the highlights of 2021 and also take a look forward at what we're expecting and what we're looking forward to in 2022. Obviously, the world has moved on slightly. Things have opened up a bit and then they close again and then they open up again. And hopefully we'll see, more of a return, possibly to the open air gigs. I think vaccine passport, certainly in the UK, will become a thing, certainly with indoor gigs. But, we shall see in due course. But before we look at 2022, let's take a look back at 2021. An interesting year, which we kind of tracked during our first full year of doing this podcast, clearly. And some of the album songs, gigs that we'll talk about people will remember that we mentioned at the time.
Yeah.
So album-wise, Brian, what were your sort of top albums of last year?
Oh, top albums of last year. First off the bat, Mammoth WVH. I thought that was a very, very impressive debut album from Wolfgang, and it's an album I keep coming back to. I think it's just a really strong album. Hopefully we get to see, as you say, maybe we might see him at Download. It'd be lovely to see him live, because any of the footage that I have seen of him, he's killing it live. He's great singer, and he's a great guitar player. So that one, I was very impressed with his first debut album. I know you like the album as well too.
Oh, fantastic. And when you consider that he wrote all the songs and he played all the instruments on all the songs, and the album was built up over a few years. He was fortunate enough to play some of the songs to his late father, Eddie Van Halen. But it's an amazing debut. When you and this, the quality of the songs from start to finish, through Mr. Ed, Epiphany, and of course the song Distance that we talked about very early on, which in a way is a kind of a tribute to his dad, Eddie Van Halen, as I mentioned earlier. I mean, it's just an incredible piece of work. And for a relatively young guy, obviously with a great kind of musical heritage, as it were, but a brilliant debut. And as you say, I hope we get to see him at some point. I know he's been on tour with Guns N' Roses in the last few months, and as you say, hopefully we'll see him over here. Well, when we looked at this album when it came out, we were a bit dismissive, but it's one of those albums, Battle for Garden's Gate by Greta Van Fleet, which has really grown on me in the last few months. And I remember when we were young, do you remember when you used to buy an album, and because you didn't have a lot of money, so you'd buy an album and then you'd play it, and there seemed to be a kind of cliche at the time, take a few listens to get into it. I'm not quite into it yet, or whatever expression people use. Yeah. And this was a sort of case in point in a way. And I was talking to a friend of mine about this, Will, and you have to be in a way the right frame of mind for this album, because it's quiet. You have to sort of let it wash over you in a way. But there are some absolutely magnificent songs on here. The songs, first two songs of the album, The Heat Above, is a hugely uplifting song. And if you want something to really kind of lift your spirits, then check out The Heat Above. We talked about My Way Soon when it came out, and that's fast forwarding to our favourite songs of the year. That is absolutely one of my favourite songs of the year. But some great songs on that album. So I would urge everyone to take another listen to the Greta Van Fleet album. And I think they've moved away from the kind of Led Zepp sound. There's still tinges of the kind of grandiose sound. Yeah. But just really, really good stuff, and great musicianship, and as I say, some good songs, really good songs. So I would certainly recommend that album, Battle for Garden's Gate by Greta Van Fleet. What else you got on your list, Brian?
I'm keeping my best one to the last. An album that we haven't discussed in the show throughout the year, and I'm quite surprised. Buckcherry. Buckcherry's new album, which is called Hellbound, and it is just fantastic. Great. Josh is a great singer. It's just really strong materials. It's a shame, actually. I think Buckcherry were booked for a tour in the UK, either back end of last year, beginning of this year, and it's all obviously going to be rescheduled. But I would definitely check out the Buckcherry album, Hellbound. It is just top to bottom, fantastic album. And one that it bypassed me, and I just heard some Buckcherry on the radio, and I thought, I'm going to go check out the new album, and it's really, really good. So I'll stick some tracks on the playlist for Buckcherry's Hellbound, which is really, really good. And again, I think Josh, the singer, was down for auditioning for Velvet Revolver.
Is that right?
I think so. So that was my other. What about you? How are you doing in your list?
Well, Dead Daisies brought out Holy Ground, which we talked about at the time. Glenn Hughes, if you like, first album with debut album with the Dead Daisies, and a real departure for them. I think we mentioned at the time, and again, really good stuff. Good solid rock. It was kind of modern sounding rock album. I would recommend the title track, Like No Other, which is really, just really good solid rock song. So yeah, I get another album that I sort of have persevered with and go back to, and helped by the fact that I saw them a couple of months ago and they played a lot of songs off that album. But Holy Ground by the Dead Daisies, I would certainly put in my top 3 or 4 for the year.
Yeah. Yeah, and before I talk about my top album of the year, the one I would just give a shout out to as well too, which I think certainly surprised me with the quality of it, was the Smiths Kotzen album.
Yeah,
Adrian Smith and Richie Kotzen, and probably out of all of it, when we get into talking about 2022, I'm hoping by March we get a chance to see the pair of them on a stage. But I'm very excited. I didn't know what to expect with that collaboration, but it really, really works well. So Smith Kotzen was a bit of a surprise. Could have gone either way, but great album.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as you say, very surprising. And I mean, you would expect, in a way, good songs and good musicianship from those guys. Great pedigree, the pair of them. Talking of Adrian Smith, of course, and we mentioned at the time, but a huge album this year was Senjutsu by Iron Maiden, which I think do you remember at the time we talked about it? 80 minutes long.
Yeah.
10 songs. Just epic from start to finish. And I do recall us saying, that in a way they're writing, long songs for the sake of it. And since then I read a few interviews, and they really they do respect their fans, but they don't write necessarily thinking, oh, our fans are going to want 2 minute, 3 minute, The Trooper or Flight of Icarus or Number of the Beast or whatever. They write songs which they hope that their fans are going to like. But standout songs from that. Songs like The Darkest Hour we talked about, Death of the Celts, and The Time Machine, my personal favourite off that album. So stick them on the old playlist, Brian. That'll fill it up.
It'll just fill it out with 25 minutes on 3 songs. So my album of the year. Have you got an album of the year?
Well, I would go with the Mammoth WVH album. By a long way, my favourite album of 2021.
Actually, the Mammoth album was great. The Mammoth album was really, really good. But in terms of, for me, the Thunder album, right from the get-go, with Last One Out, Turn the Lights Off, all the way through, St. George's Day, going to Sin City, the fact that it's titled Sin City, and then you listen to the track, it's got an AC/DC vibe to it. It's got that. I just was so impressed with the quality of the Thunder album, the production, the songwriting. It's just a band in top form, and it's just a shame that, as you and I know, Thunder put an album out, they would have gone out and toured it, we would have gone to see them, they'd have had a young British band probably supporting them that we would have gone and seen. So it just feels that you have lots of artists that we've talked about have put out some amazing products that they're not able to get out and tour on the back of. So my album of the year is Thunder, All the Right Noises.
Very good. Yeah, good choice.
Okay.
Good choice. So those are our albums of the year. Of course, we invite everyone who's listening to tell us what they think. If you've got any other thoughts, then feel free to let us know, of course, via Facebook and on Twitter at FTATPod. Of course, songs of the year. So songs, we talked about this quite a lot, in that, you get songs from new bands, you get songs from existing acts. We touched upon one or two already. Top songs of this year, just standalone tracks. I think I mentioned it at the time, and I'm going to just go with my favorite song of the year, and a band that I hope go on to bigger and better things is a song called Remedy by Heard. Now, Heard are a relatively new band out of Birmingham, and I believe they're in the process of putting out or starting to put out new material, and they're starting to get onto the bills of festivals already.
Yeah.
In 2022, and but Remedy by Heard, I think I mentioned it last time.
You did.
Is my one of my standout songs of the year for sure.
Yeah. For me, I go back into a little bit more of that southern rock, and this is a band that, for me, I often overlook. You know, when you talk about southern rock, you talk about Skynyrd and the Black Crowes, and maybe even Blackstone Cherry, for example. I've got that sort of southern vibe to them. But a band that I overlook, and I know a lot of people are fan. I think you may be a fan of this band. We saw them at Ramblin' Man. Is Blackberry Smoke. Put out an album last year, and the standout track on it for me was a track called "You Hear Georgia." And it's just bourbon-soaked casks. It's just got that nice southern drawl, Hammond organ, Charlie Stars singing great. It just puts me in a good mood when I hear that track. So that's one of my tracks of the year from Blackberry Smoke.
Very good. Couple of mentions to a couple of other songs from female artists. Samantha Fish, who is just kind of a blues rock performer. I think we mentioned her 2 or 3 podcasts ago. Been really active since about 2009-10, and really starting to kind of have some success, certainly in the UK in the last few years. But the song Twisted Ambition, which came out this year, I think we talked about it at the time, great song. And then similarly, a fairly recent song by Els Bailey, a British performer, called Sunshine City. Check those 2 songs out.
Probably one of my favourite tracks of the year. Is probably one of the first rock tracks I really took heed of in 2021. Is obviously the lead-off single from the Foo Fighters album, which was Waiting on a War, which is just such a great track. And obviously Medicine at Midnight, which is a really good album. Obviously didn't make my top few albums of the year, but still a really, really good album, and one that was, released early in the year. And obviously Waiting on a War was for me the standout track on that album. So there you go.
Yeah,
those are our
choice.
songs.
Good choice. Just a couple more from me. Again, we mentioned Lavara earlier this year, linked with Toto, in that Trev Lukather is Steve Lukather's son. Mm-hmm. So good pedigree again. We talked about earlier, and their song Automatic. Check that out. Really good song. Really good song. And then finally, a song called Riches by the Bison Family. Bison Family were joined in 2020 by Phil Campbell, ex of the Temperance Movement. He's moved on from them now. But check out a song called Riches by the Bison Family. Not a Temperance Movement song, not a Temperance Movement style, clearly with his sort of, if you like, trademark vocals. But really good song from, as I say, the Bison Family featuring Phil Campbell.
Great album, I have to say. It's very, very, again, in that southern, in that nice acoustic sort of, may I say, Laurel Canyon, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Yeah.
You may say that. Yes, of course. Feel free.
I am. And I have.
So that was Songs of the Year. Gigs. Did you go to any gigs this year, Brian?
I did.
I remember last year. Do you remember when we did this last year? We'd been to one gig all year. We were really scratching around. This year has been slightly different, of course, thankfully.
Yeah. Gigs wise, a couple that stand out for me, and the Marillion. I so enjoyed Marillion at Edinburgh. They were so pleased to be back on stage. I knew what I was going to get, and I was very, very surprised. I also enjoyed Idlewild, because I didn't really know Idlewild's material, and they really surprised me. So that was a nice find of 2020, and I loved going to see Vega. When we went to see Vega at the Underworld in Camden in London Town, I was blown away by Vega, their material, their new album. That was just, and even the strength of the bands that were on the bill as well too. So Vega at the Underworld was a really nice surprise, and I was really impressed. And their album Anarchy and Unity could have made our top list of albums as well too. So those are just some of the standout gigs for 2021 for me, which is great.
Yeah, that's good choices. Good choices. Again, I do remember last year we were talking about that we were looking forward to gigs starting up again, and the first gig that we went to this year, and it's a standout thing for me because it was the first for in 18 months, 2 years, was the Steelhouse Festival in Wales that we went to in the summer. And it was, I remember saying at the time, it wasn't a religious experience. There weren't people sort of crying and wailing and, but there was a really nice vibe, and it was really nice to have some sort of normality back. And the bands on the bill were great. But the Darkness were on the bill. You talked about Phil Campbell was on the other Phil Campbell, the ex-Motorhead Phil Campbell was on the bill. Those Damn Crows and several other bands that we talked about. But certainly that festival, the Steelhouse Festival, will live long in the memory for me for lots of reasons. But primarily that whole kind of vibe on the first day. When we said at the time, when we look back on it, a lot of the acts were clearly really pleased to be back and doing what they love. And I think it was obviously reciprocated in the audience, and every band was welcome and every artist was welcome with open arms. Do you remember that, Brian? You weren't too drunk to remember that?
I'll plead the Fifth Amendment in that one, Matthew. For me, I can, as you and I can, as you and I know, I didn't see all of the festival. No. I didn't see all of it. However, what I thought was really nice is for Steelhouse, a lot of the, let's just say the lower down in the bill. We've been to festivals in the past where if you go down at 12:30 on a Friday morning or Friday or Saturday morning, there's 25 people there waiting to see the opening band. And I thought it was great when we were at Steelhouse when everybody was so pleased to have live music that we had great crowds down right from the get-go. Bands like Collateral, Empire, they were getting a lot of the young bands were getting a really good reception, from the audience because everybody was so pleased to see them. So Steelhouse is good. I have to say the band for the weekend at Steelhouse for me was Phil Campbell. Phil Campbell and the young stand-in singer that was playing with Phil Campbell. And his material was not what I was expecting. I was expecting a Motorhead clone band, and I got a really good classic rock, well-formed band. They were brilliant.
Absolutely.
Really enjoyed them.
Absolutely. And then finally, gigs-wise, and again, I've talked about this band quite a lot. When I went to see them, I saw them 3 or 4 times this year, is Massive Wagons, who headlining on their own tour were a revelation. And again, I've talked about them a lot. They're one of my new favourite bands. You can pick whatever song you like off the House of Noise album, Brian. Bagging New Stereo we talked about, and the Curry song. But yeah, great stuff. And that really was I think it was the first or second indoor gig I'd been to this year. And they were great fun, great value. And really lifted the spirits. So, another shout out for Massive Wagons, my new second, maybe joint first favourite band.
Oh.
No, second favourite. So
I was going to say Brian Tatler. Brian Tatler would not be happy if you went.
No.
He wouldn't.
So that was the gigs of the year, Brian, and we look forward to more next year, of course. Events of the year. What are your sort of standout memories of 2021 event-wise?
First one off the bat, heavy metal our hard rock won the Eurovision Song Contest. Yay!
It's true.
Is it
Maneskin?
Maneskin. Were they Italian?
They are Italian. Yeah, they were and they are Italian. Absolutely.
Yes, they with their red hot chili pepper fused funk metal. I thought that was good. And interestingly, I think I read during this week is there's going to be a lot more rock and metal at Eurovision next year. So a lot of people, a lot of people are saying that rock is back in Eurovision for next year. So we'll have to see what whenever Eurovision comes round, if that comes true. So that's one of my events of the year.
Okay, yeah, that was good. That was good. We talked about this at the time, didn't we? Zitti e Buoni was the song that won Eurovision, and I'm trying to remember what it was translated to into English, but it'll come to me maybe. For me, the thing that stood out for me was Richie Faulkner, the Falcon from Judas Priest we mentioned earlier, having his aortic aneurysm live on stage and carrying on playing. I mean, that was staggering. I mean, we talked about it at the time, but to feel that you're having a heart attack of sorts and to carry on playing, it was almost superhuman. Gladly, he's making a recovery as we speak, and we wish him well. Of course, we continue to wish him well as we did at the time, but that was just incredible.
Yeah.
I remember at the time we were joking about Nita Strauss getting hit by Alice Cooper's cane, but having a sort of an aortic aneurysm live on stage, and carrying on playing it's just staggering, really. Sadly, we lost Dusty Hill this year. Dusty Hill, the bass player from ZZ Top, and for many people who remember the 70s, 80s, 90s, and more specifically that classic Eliminator album period, 83, 84, with the iconic videos, will remember Dusty Hill. Even if you weren't a rock fan, you will remember and you will know of ZZ Top, of course, with the long beards and the spinning guitars and so on. So, yeah, sad loss, Dusty Hill. One of those likable characters, and good singer, good bass player, and part of that kind of classic 70s, 80s. And still going strong. We saw ZZ Top. We'll see them a few times over the years, haven't we?
Yeah.
And sad loss, Dusty Hill.
They were known as the little band from Texas, and I think they were always unassuming. No matter how great they were in the MTV time of the 80s, they were just this little three-piece band. And I just thought the way in which Dusty passed, and then they very quietly have brought Elwood, they're one of the roadies, into the band to just continue things on very quietly, etc. Just a really, really cool way of keeping things going from a ZZ Top perspective. And then we lost Charlie Watts as well, which is a shame. When you think of the Rolling Stones, the Rolling Stones for the 50 odd years that they've been going, they hadn't lost a member since 1969 when Brian Jones passed, and obviously Charlie Watts passed away last year. And again, the Stones kept their commitments going and brought in Steve Jordan to play drums on it. But that really an end of an era for the Rolling Stones. A lot of people see the Stones as Charlie Watts drums and Keith Richards guitar. So couple of big losses in the music world.
Absolutely. So that was 2021.
Yeah.
Looking forward to this year. We're now in 2022, of course. What are you looking forward to, Brian?
Porcupine Tree. Drop the mic.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, after
UK tour, playing London. Of course, that's it.
Yes, and I'll be there. I'll be there. It's classic Steven Wilson. He brings out his album at the beginning of the year. I think he's got a Grammy nomination for the album. For years, it's that classic case of, for years, every time Steven Wilson gets interviewed, it's are Porcupine Tree getting back together? Are you going to get back together? And he was, no, never going to do it. And then middle of the year middle of the year, then it's just straight out social media, a little teaser on Facebook. You know, they reignite the Porcupine Tree moniker on Facebook, and everybody just goes nuts. And then, 24 hours later, the album's done.
Yeah.
And they're touring next year. So to me, that'll be that'll be the event of the year, obviously, as well as King's X touring.
Indeed. Yeah, closely followed by King's X, of course, who are back.
Exactly.
So we mentioned. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing them. You know much about King's X? You heard of them?
I believe so. I believe that they're up and coming band on their 40th anniversary tour.
That's right. Yeah, looking forward to seeing them. For me, I like a rock autobiography, Brian. Well, later this year, Geddy Lee, singer and bass player from Rush, brings out his autobiography. It won't be all sex, drugs, and rock and roll because they weren't that sort of band. But I'm sure it'll be an interesting, if you like, behind the scenes view of Rush from their inception in essentially the late 60s through to when they finished in 2015. So I'm looking forward to that. New solo album from Bruce Dickinson comes out this year.
Really? I didn't know that.
Indeed. His first solo album since 17 years, and could be interesting. Bruce is one of those kind of outspoken, multi-talented individuals, and therefore you don't really know what to expect from his live album. I don't expect it to be so particularly Maiden-like, but you never know. So we'll see about that. Another thing I'm looking forward to this year, Brian, is the latest solo album from Tony the Cat Martin, former singer of Black Sabbath. Not actually a cat, of course. We should just make that it's very specific.
Because there's only Peter Criss is the cat.
Indeed.
Yeah,
Peter Criss is the cat man. Tony the Cat Martin bringing out his only his second solo album called Thorns, and one of those voices that probably been away too long. Had a decent spell in Black Sabbath, the second longest serving vocalist in Black Sabbath, after Ozzy, of course.
Was he really? I never knew that.
Yeah, on a kind of cumulative basis.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. And gigs wise, mentioned a couple earlier. Pearl Jam, Hyde Park. That might happen this year.
But we mentioned that in 2021.
I don't know. Yeah, we've been talking about it for a few years, haven't we? Such is the nature of things this year.
Yeah. Don't mention Ozzy and the Judas Priest tour, because that's going to be that'll happen in about 2025.
We'll mention that at the end of this year. Yeah. And also hopefully the return of Ramblin' Man Festival down in Kent. We live in hope that happens, and then we live in hope that other gigs that are scheduled that people are looking forward to actually obviously take place. We're already seeing some cancellations and some postponements. Sadly, Diamond Head were playing in Edinburgh,
and you were coming. I was
coming to see you, but sadly cancelled.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. I suppose you've got to expect that now, haven't you? Really.
Everybody's just being very, very sensible, and promoters and bands are actually thinking of their audience as well too. And because if they're not playing, and if everybody's asking for the refunds and tickets, it does the bands no favors. It doesn't help the bands out them not playing. So it's actually very responsible of the bands to be cancelling gigs. So I really feel for the music industry and the whole entertainment industry at the moment, just with what they're having to contend with.
Yeah, indeed. There's nothing more important than people's safety and health, of course. Yeah. So, understandable. So that was it. A quick view of 2022.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the part of the show, part of the podcast that everyone looks forward to. Everyone, bar none. People stop me in the street. I've said this before. A little old lady the other day stopped me in the street and said, I really like the other guy a lot. My favourite. I said, that's very nice. It's charming. And she said, yeah, you're not too bad, but I really like Brian more than you. And I said, okay, fine, don't milk it. And then she said, but my favorite part of the whole thing is, of course, you ready, Brian?
I'm indeed.
Jam time.
You're doing this like Parisian walkways, like Gary Moore. You started off with you started off with hidden gem time, and then you go hidden gem time, and now you're going to. So there's gonna be on our Facebook pages. There's going to be polls going at how long did Matt hold hidden gem times, and you'll have to get your breathing techniques up if you're going to go for like 20 seconds or something.
That's a good point. I might try that next time.
You do that. See how long you can go.
I will next time. Maybe next time.
Anyway, that was hidden gem time. Thanks, Matt. Is that the show?
What?
Oh, we've got to do it.
What have you got for us, Brian?
So, if you can remember back 4 hours ago when we started the show, I said that for my hidden gem, I was going to pick one of the two artists. I'm almost certain I went to more than 2 gigs in 2004. I'm almost certain I must have done. Anyway, obviously I went to see Rush, and my hidden gem is an album from 1994, Matt, from a artist called Ian McNabb. He was in a band called the Icicle Works.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so Ian was in Icicle Works, and they had a great single that came out in the early 80s, which was Love is a Wonderful Colour. But when he went solo in the 90s, he brought out an album called Head Like a Rock. Now, Head Like the Rock in 1994, it actually got nominated for the Mercury Music Prize Award. And what I loved about the album itself was that he actually recorded, he's a massive Neil Young fan, and he recorded his album with Crazy Horse, and it is just a really, really, really great, strong album. I have to say, I was so blown away in 1994 when I heard it. The track I'll put on our playlist is a track called Fire Inside My Soul, which is the lead-off album. I offer, as part of my Hidden Gems this episode, Ian McNabb, Head Like a Rock, with Crazy Horse as his backing band.
Very good. Very interesting. Yeah, we'll check that out. So my hidden gem this week is a book. Now, I do like a book.
You do.
And I also like Black Sabbath. And when you bring the two together, you get a book about Black Sabbath.
Or it could be a book about fragrances. Who knows?
Well, that's true. And this is a book called Rat Salad. It's written by Paul Wilkinson. It's been out a few years. It explores the essentially the Aussie kind of classic period, 1969 through to 1975. And not only does it dissect each song down to chords, the keys, the time signatures. It's a real muso's book. And if you're a Sabbath fan, it's obviously a great book if you're a Sabbath fan. But interwoven with the breakdown album by album, it's also kind of sort of historic, sort of social, economic, sort of commentary on the times from Vietnam through to Bloody Sunday, through the space program and Nixon and so on, lots of events during the 70s. So, favorite book of mine. I read it a few times. I'm on to my third or fourth copy. I keep losing them or leaving them on trains or that sort of thing. But yeah, I would recommend as my hidden gem this time, Rat Salad, Black Sabbath, The Classic Years by Paul Wilkinson.
Excellent.
There's my copy just there, Brian.
It is indeed. I can see that.
Right, so that was it, episode 24. So we'll see you next time.
Yeah, absolutely. And just as usual, just like to thank everybody for listening. If you haven't subscribed to the show so far, please do so. You'll get the show on all of the major streaming services. You'll get us on Apple Podcasts. You'll find us on a Google Cast. You will find us on Spotify. You'll also get us on Facebook and Twitter. What's our Twitter handle again?
At FT80 Pod.
There, you've heard it here from the man himself. We shall see you all next episode, people. You all take care. You rock on. Matt, I won't see you in a couple of weeks for Diamond Head, but we will reschedule. And if I don't see you in person soon, I'll see you for the next show. So rock on, everybody. Take care.
For Those About to Pod, We Salute You is a Mealy Rogers media production. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe, and we'll see you next time.